Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Rapid Done right here on Rapid Television. Right now it's time for the big conversation. My name is Victor. Okay.
My name is Martha Alu. Good morning and welcome to the 9 o'clock conversation.
On the big conversation, we're going to be centering on the Nigerian economy that has undergone major changes since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came into office in 2023. The removal of the petrol subsidy, foreign exchange reforms, and tax changes were designed to fix long-standing problems and put the economy on a more sustainable path. 3 years on, the federal government says the reforms have strengthened public finances, increased revenue, improved foreign reserves, and supported economic growth. Its recent reform scorecard says subsidy reforms alone generated 15.8 trillion naira in savings between June 2023 and December 2025. But for many Nigerians, the picture is more complicated. The reforms have also brought higher living costs, pressure on household incomes, and increased costs for businesses. Even the government acknowledges that translating economic gains into better living conditions remains a work in progress. This according to the Federal Ministry of Finance. So, what is the real scorecard of Tinubu's economic reforms? What has worked? What has not worked? And are the gains reaching ordinary Nigerians? That is the conversation that we're going to be having today with Idris Adeniyi, who's an economist and portfolio manager. Idris, good morning. Welcome to the conversation.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, viewers.
Good morning. It's been quite a while that we had to talk about some of the economic situation in the country. It's good that you're here today.
Thank you very much.
Let's take you straight to August 19th, when the federal government presented what we call the Nigerian Reform Scorecard. The benefits, the costs, and the harms prevented. They talked about 5 areas: fiscal sustainability, external stability, investment climate, and social impact and growth. But before we dive into that, before we begin to talk about the individual figures, what should a genuine economic scorecard look like for a nation?
Okay. Thank you for having me again, and good morning, viewers. I think let me start by describing the economic reform embarked upon by this government as a stabilization success, and it's yet to translate into the welfare story that an ordinary Nigerian on the streets or the households are interested in, which is more of food, housing, less transportation costs, higher purchasing power, and disposable income. But then, what has happened is that, going to the trajectory now, Nigeria, this government came into power with a very, very, very tight, economy, because virtually everything was in crumbles, in crashes, because that was when we had risk means of over 30 trillion.
Yeah.
People are taking strong arbitrage advantage of our FX gap, between parallel and official market. Our reserve was encumbered to the tune of so much such that only $3 billion was available for export business or trade balances and all that. So, and then if you are looking at, because you need to understand where you're coming from to appreciate where you are, and then reprice where you are going. And I think if you look at it from the macro point of view, this government has done excellently well. The data don't lie, figures don't lie. You can see that everywhere. But if you look at it from the angle of macro, that's household, businesses, and all that. Yeah, many Nigerians are still asking, are we going to be eating inflation figure? Are we going to be eating external reserve and all that? But this is something that, that has taken so long to be destroyed, and it's taking probably, and we expect it to take just little time to be reconstructed. And I think by economics theory, micros are supposed to graduate to macro.
Right.
But in this case, because the macros are so bad, micros don't even exist.
Yeah.
So we now have to start from top, and they expect it to cascade down, which is a misnomer situation in an economy, going by economic theories.
We're back to continue with the conversation, talking about the economic scorecard by this administration. I've been here with Idris Adeniyi, economist and portfolio manager. I've also been joined right now by Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Dr. Muda, good morning and welcome to the conversation as well today.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. Good morning. And
Well,
good morning, Idris.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Dr. Muda. Good to see you, sir.
Yeah.
All right. Dr. Muda, let's look at some of the numbers as well. Finance Minister Taiwo Oyedele says that between June 2023 and December 2025, subsidy reforms mobilized 15.8 trillion naira for the federation. But the federal government did not keep all that money, according to what the government said. They say 5.4 trillion naira accrued to the federal government, while 10.4 trillion naira went to states and local government. Now, is 15.8 trillion naira really a saving for Nigeria economy, or should we be more precise and say it represents resources that became available after subsidy was removed? What do you think?
Well, whichever way you look at it, it's still a savings, because when you had major distortions in the economy and you are able to correct those distortions, whatever comes to you as a result of the correction of those distortions is a consequence of the action that you have taken. So it's an income, it's a savings, but the important thing is that the resources that will have been lost has been brought back to the kitty. So that, for me, I think is what it all means. It has improved the financial condition of both the federal and, more importantly, the subnationals. Because when you look at this reform, particularly the fuel subsidy thing, and some other reforms, actually, the subnationals were even bigger beneficiaries of it. You know, if you look at their budget over the last 3 years, if you look at their IGR over the last 3 years, if you look at their allocation over the last 3 years, it has grown phenomenally, you know. And so that is why when we have conversations about impact, about poverty, we should not just be looking at the federal, we should also be looking at the subnationals, because they are closer to the people, they have more resources, are they spending on the right things, and so on and so forth. So for me, I think it's putting the fiscal position of the government in a much better state. But more importantly, when we talk about reform, it's about correcting distortions so that you can attract more investment, you can create more jobs, you can gather more confidence for investors. That is a bigger objective of a reform.
all right. Thank you so much, Dr. Muda, for joining us. Now, on one of your interviews, you said that macroeconomic stability is a means and not an end. And rightly so. The government, after 5 days after releasing its own scorecard, do you think that the scorecard itself understood that distinction, or did it basically conflate stability with success?
No. The minister was very clear that they have achieved this stabilization, that the next major challenge they are faced with now is how to achieve, better impact on welfare and on productivity, and also for businesses. Because this is not just only about the welfare of the people, it's also about productivity for many businesses. It's about cost of production, cost of operation that have gone up. And it's not in all cases that businesses have been able to, record much higher returns to compensate for the increases in costs. So those businesses too, their margins have actually been severely contracted as a result of the reform. So it was duly acknowledged, and that is why I like the presentation by the minister. It was very clear that this thing has generated some benefits, but there are also costs, what you call the cost of economic stabilization, which is what he highlighted in terms of the inflationary effect of the reform. So that is why we said it is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. And the end is better welfare, better productivity. But the fact of the matter is that reform is a journey. If you have a distortion of over 30 years and you are trying to correct it, you can't finish the business in 3 years, not even in 4 years, not even in 5 years. It's an incremental thing. And the point I can make is that Between 2023 and now, we have seen some gradual, improvement generally in the economy, and even some positive impacts, on the welfare of the people. But we are not there yet, I must admit.
They say it's an incremental thing. But let's take it back again to 2023, when the government actually did say that its incremental federal government resources between June 2023 and December 2025 totaled 20.4 trillion naira. Let's also look at the composition there. It reads 11.9 trillion naira for incremental borrowing, 3.1 trillion naira additional independent revenue, right? And the government's share of subsidy-related resources contributed to the balance as it is. The government also says that 58% of those 20.4 trillion naira incremental resources came from borrowing, 27% from subsidy savings, and 15% from another revenue. So the question is, when the government says that the reform generated 20.4 trillion naira in additional resources, should borrowing really be counted as a gain from economic reform?
Okay, I think going to what the minister said, during his presentation, he said, quoting him now, that those revenues are not alert-based. They are not revenues that just see they hit the account and they receive alert for them. They are not clear like that. He stated clearly that most of them are as a result of FX, FX differences.
Yeah.
The customs import duty, whereas when you charge $10 initially, you exchange at 465 naira, but now you have to exchange at 1,400. That's for customs. And they also talked about the petroleum tax and all of that, from NRS, former FRS. So that accounted for the significant, increase that you see that you're talking about now. And then one thing about income, of course, in the process, we've seen fact sharing beating its own record on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
That's buttressing what Dr. Muda just said now, that the subnationals have a lot of responsibilities now placed on the shoulder because revenue have increased significantly. And of course, the federal government too has also had its own share. And now talk about the third tier of government too. So but the debt side of it, the exchange difference that has accounted for the increase in revenue is also the same, it's, also translated, into the overburden, debt profile. Because before now, Nigeria's debt profile is not only local, it has some international, part of it too. So as prior to this government, prior to May 29, your exchange rate was, of course, heavily subsidized at 400 and whatever plus. Now at 1,400, you expect that it will also is a double-edged sword. It worked for your revenue. It will also impact on your debt, and I think that's what happens. And then when you now dissect our debt, that debt profile now, Nigerians will say, "Oh, you government say you are generating so much revenue. Why are you still borrowing?" I think it's simple sense, because you have a debt profile and you have the cost attached to it. Local debt financing is huge, from DMO, from CBN, whatsoever. I mean, for treasury bills now, or market rate now is around maybe 17, 18, 19%. You get it? So, and then you have a foreign debt that is coming to you at single digits, maybe around 4% or 5%. It's just the mix, because you have to use one to augment the other. Beside the exchange rate that is now highly controlled and they're favorable, the premium, there's no arbitrage opportunity for, like we used to have in the past, where people exchange for 400 and then go to the black market to go and sell almost 100% of it. That is very tight now. We just have premium of about 5%. Who wants to take that much sweat to do that? So it's for me it's a win-win on both sides for Nigeria. Okay. What we just need is proper accountability by the administrators of these funds, so that Nigerians will understand better how the whole system flows.
All right, let's go to Dr. Muda. We understand that he has quite a short time, so we'll run with it. Now, you broadly credited the administration with rescuing the economy from a real tipping point. And after you had said that, critics now came out to say that if you continue to endorse the president with this kind of, or endorse the economy with this kind of institutional endorsement, or if you come with this kind of institutional endorsement, it will give the government a cover to avoid urgency in productivity and welfare. Now, how do you respond to this critique on CPPE's positioning?
No, you see, criticism has to be very constructive, because if you want also to be taken seriously, it's only fair that you acknowledge what are the positives that had happened, and also flag the shortcomings that exist. There is no reform that is perfect. Certainly, there will be some, issues, either in the course of implementation or in the process of conception of the reforms. So what you have done in CPP is to highlight the positives and to acknowledge the gains that have been recorded, and to also simultaneously point to the gaps that exist, as far as the reform is concerned. It's very clear to everybody that this reform has brought about serious inflationary shock. Costs have gone up, and that is why there is so much hue and cry about the reform. The fuel subsidy removal has increased cost of energy, cost of transportation, cost of logistics. The foreign exchange reform has also increased the cost of imports. And because we're also highly import dependent, the impact is felt by everybody. So it has affected purchasing power. It has increased the level of poverty. And for many citizens and businesses, their income has not grown sufficiently enough to be able to make up for the increase in costs. So margins have been affected. Real incomes have been affected. Those are the issues. But should we have the reforms? Certainly not, because if you have not had the reforms, the Nigerian economic situation will have been much worse. We will have been in the category of maybe Zimbabwe or Venezuela. It's like a patient that has very critical illness and that requires a surgery. In the process of doing the surgery, there will be some pains. After the surgery, there will be some pains. What is important is that as a medical person, you have to quickly administer those things that will reduce the pain. Right. That is the missing link now.
All right.
We have not sufficiently addressed the pains, either at the federal and at the state level. But as to whether we need the reform, of course we need it.
All right.
So the engagement has to be, how do you mitigate the pains more effectively than what you have done? That is where we are at the moment.
All right, Dr. Muda. Now, thankfully, you have mentioned a bit of what my next question would be to you. Sometime last month, the Minister of Finance stood before the Ministerial Advisory Committee, and he made mention of the fact that, there's that gap between the macroeconomic level and the microeconomic level, and it's such a visible gap. And 3 action points he called at that meeting. He said they'll be able to assess the gap between the rich and the poor to find out how to bridge that gap. They also did make mention of the fact that they would try to access how many people are now out of poverty, amongst other things that were deliberated in that meeting. You have also said that that is where we are right now. Now, from your experience, how do you think that this bridge can be, gap rather, can be bridged by the government? Because the gap is so, our guest here, Mr. Idris, made mention of the fact that the microeconomic level is almost non-existent as we speak. So how do we bridge that gap between, both worlds?
Well, the way to bridge the gap first is to realign our spending priorities. I'm talking about spending priorities at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local government level.
Okay.
Because no matter how we look at it, there has been an improvement in revenues as a result of the reforms. Although people argue that there are nominal increases, but even if you adjust for inflation, you still have a significant increase in revenues. So the issue is, have we properly aligned the spending or the use of those resources to meet the challenges that the reforms has created in terms of the cost of living, the cost of food, the cost of transportation, cost of education, and things like that? That is where the engagement should move to. So the government at all levels needs to be held a lot more accountable to ensure that they spend their money not to be building flyovers all over the place, even when they are not necessary, not to be buying SUVs for everybody, public officials, traditional rulers, not to be building huge office complexes and so on, but to address the basic needs of the people. That is how you can address poverty problem. People are complaining about food. What are you doing about food? What are we doing about agricultural, productivity? What are we doing about subsidy for farm inputs? What are we doing about rural infrastructure so that they can link the farms to the city, farms to the market? What are we doing about providing transportation that is subsidized for people? So it's not all subsidies that are bad. There's nothing wrong if all the state governments have about 500, 1,000 buses for their states. They can afford it at this time, so that the citizens are not exploited by all these private commercial vehicles. So these are the kind of intervention in education, in health. They can do a lot more, and it has to be responsibility across board, because there is too much focus on the center for everything. We are not sufficiently demanding accountability at the subnational level that are getting the bulk of the resources as a result of this reform. And I must tell you, even the federal government is paying a huge price for this reform. That is what Idris just mentioned. The cost of debt service has gone up significantly because of the exchange rate depreciation. The interest payment on federal government bonds on treasury bills has also gone up. And it is the federal government that has exposure to all these debt instruments more than the subnationals. That is why their own fiscal space has been squeezed. And they have stopped ways and means. This is the challenges that that is being faced now at the federal level. So the states are even in a much more comfortable position to do a lot more.
All right.
You can see what the FCT minister is doing in Abuja. Of course, this is an example of what can happen at the subnationals. So they should align their spending more to the priorities of the people, of the ordinary people.
All right.
That is the main issue here.
Okay. Mr. Muda, let's put another figure on the table as well. I've been giving the figures more to Mr. Idris, but let me give him some figures as well. Still on the scorecard, if you're talking about it subnational, but according to the government scorecard, gross foreign reserves increased from about $35 billion in May 2023 to $52.5 billion, while the net reserves rose from roughly $3 billion to $34.8 billion. According to the report, we have that out there. But the IMF independently also reported that gross reserves reached $46 billion at the end of 2025, and that rose from $40 billion at the end of 2024, while the net reserves rose from $23 billion to $35 billion. Now, these are big numbers, but here's the question. Why should ordinary Nigerians actually care about higher foreign reserves? And how does the $52.2 or $52.5 billion in reserves translate into cheaper food, more stable prices, or even better economic opportunities?
People may not link it easily, but there's a strong nexus between investment and poverty. Because it is through investment that you create jobs. Now you are in Rapid TV. Somebody has invested in that station. You can imagine the number of people that are employed there. If the investment environment was not right, the person who set up the TV station may not be in a position to set it up. So the point I'm making is that you need reserves to be able to engender and inspire the confidence of investors, especially with respect to your currency. Now, all the inflows of foreign capital into the country is partly a reflection of the fact that people have more confidence because you have the reserves to meet your foreign obligations. And I've heard people say you have the reserve, go and be spending the reserve. You don't spend reserves like that. You use the reserve to support your currency. You use the reserves to meet your foreign obligation. There are a whole lot of things that we import. You don't pay for them in naira. You pay for them in foreign currency. you know. But you take the naira to the bank, it is the bank that will now make the foreign currency available. So those foreign currency expenditure is coming from the reserves. So when you see the stability of the currency, you know, I mean, there was a time the exchange rate was almost as high as 1,600, going to 1,007. Today it is around 1,350, 1,340. That also has implications for imported inflation. You can see that the way prices were galloping in 2024 is not the same thing as what we have now. So these things also have some trickle-down effect, particularly on investors. And if investment is growing, invariably jobs will grow, incomes will grow, more people will be employed. That is the way it trickles down.
All right.
So from an investment point of view, it is a very, very important indicator because it has an effect, you know, on jobs and investment. So that is the way it is. But addressing specifically cost of living, social issues like public transportation, education, health services, agri productivity is a different conversation. That is why I was talking about government spending being aligned to the needs of the people.
All right, Dr. Muda, thank you for your time with us today. We do understand that you have to attend to other things, but thank you. We do appreciate you for being here with us this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Muda. We'll talk to you some other time.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's move on now to Mr. Idris right here in the studio with us. Mr. Idris, I would love to also attend to the question that I actually posed to Dr. Muda. When I said, why should ordinary Nigerians actually care about the high foreign reserves?
Okay. So the essence is, or the advantage of us having high foreign reserve is just so that investors in Nigeria, we have, I mean, particularly foreign investors, whether portfolio investors or direct foreign direct investors, we have confidence that, look, this economy, any day, anytime, I need to take back either the profit from my investment or liquidate my investment in Nigeria and repatriate my funds to my own country. The confidence is there that, look, these guys have buffer. They have the capacity, and then they will not be defaulting me. You know, we experienced this 2022, 2021, 2023, when even airlines started charging Nigerians in dollars, you know, because they were unable to repatriate their, you know, revenue to their own country because we didn't have the FX capacity to meet their obligations. So then I also need to say that right now the FX, I mean, reserve size that Nigeria has, over $52 billion, is the highest, I mean, generated for us, the highest import cover in Africa. Just trailing Nigeria is Morocco that has 7 months import cover. Nigeria has 9 months import cover. Assuming we don't earn a dime in dollar for 9 months, we can cover every import that we make for 9 months stretch, you know, and that's not a means fit actually, because it's not what we've been seeing over time is 3 months, maximum 6 months, and that has been extended now. So, and also necessary to say that I think June of 2026, of the 10 billion FX inflow that entered Nigeria, 95% of it came from foreign portfolio investors. And then foreign direct investment was just meager, maybe around 2% or thereabout, the rest due to diaspora remittances and all that. So, but then it still shows that investors have strong confidence in Nigeria, and then they have the carrying, you know, despite the carrying cost of their own country. So at the end of the day, for Nigerians, because the more these foreign direct investors or foreign portfolio investors come, they generate employment for Nigerians one way or the other, you know, and the ordinary Nigerians, because you just have to be a Nigerian, live in Nigeria before you can benefit that. And Doctor just, you know, cited a good example of Rapid TV. It's a fast-growing TV station in Nigeria. Everybody is, it's on the conversation table of every media house now. And how did they come? Because someone had that vision, and then the environment was, you know, conducive for him to come and invest. So I think it's clearly stated. It's good for Nigeria, and it's good for Nigerians, basically.
Okay. Now, as someone who manages capital for a living, basically, You spoke about the reserves, and when you look at the reserves near 50 billion.
I think that's a compliment. I manage capital for the living.
All right, when you look at the reserves near $50 billion and the stock market's up nearly fivefold. Now, are you seeing a market that believes Nigeria's turnaround is very structural, or that is just simply chasing high yields with, what do we call it now? High yields with the window, that is good, when the window is good?
Fantastic. So I think the story of Nigeria's stock market is that of, allow me put it in quote, patriotism. Because before this period, foreign investors' portion in Nigeria's stock market, even when the market was around 30 trillion naira, was about 60 to 65%. Okay. That's for foreign portfolio investors. But today it has been moderated to just 20%. So local investors have higher gain of about 80%, and the higher portion allocation to that in that market of about 80%. And despite the growth of that market from 30 trillion to over 150 trillion that it is today. So that shows local investors' confidence. And of course, the foreign guys are more on the fixed income side anyway, particularly the OMO side of it, as the one issued by CBN. Until a few weeks ago, when CBN then changed its policy to allow local or corporate investors to invest in OMO. That has been the juice area, or the juicy area for foreign portfolio investors. So, and all we see, it's these guys enjoying the carrying trade advantage. They borrow at maybe single digit in their country, inflow it into Nigeria, get double digit advantage of maybe 23 effective yield on OMO bills, and then at the end of the day, they take the funds back to their country. It's still good. But Nigeria was doing that when we were in a very, very dire state. We needed our FX, we needed foreign investors' confidence, we need all of that would impact on our micro, now, because we on the micro side, we are shining. Everything is upward trajectory. But on the macro side, where you talk about small and medium scale businesses and all of that, because that's what sustains the economy. That's what sustains an economy. The more middle class you are able to create in an economy, the more vibrant that economy will thrive. And what creates middle class is this MSME, development. And I think that's where the focus, the next agenda of this reform should be more of, make grants, loan, capital accessible to MSMEs, and then ensure that you have social welfare that will impact directly. Because all these, what do you call it? All these naira pocket salary. I mean, it's not working. It's not working because every day Nigerians are complaining. And I think what the government also needs to do is to tackle the food prices. The food inflation, fine, it is moderating from 24% to around 17% as the last inflation figure, but it's still not enough. It's still not enough because the moment hunger is out of it, if you have food in abundance, I think that's when ordinary Nigerians will begin to feel that because of course you can also give credit to this government, which is really not their great, because it is within this administration that the bag of rice jumped to, I think, 100,000 or thereabout. But then it has decelerated to around 50,000 now, which is still good for us. So, but that is good, but it's not enough in my judgment. It's not enough. Government still needs to. This reform has been beneficial more to government finances, but we need to see the other leg now. Now that we have shining figures on the macro side, we also need to focus now on the macro level.
Okay. CPPE also said that Nigeria's 11-month disinflation streak was broken by war thousands of kilometers away from us, right? Now, what does that tell you about how fragile this recovery actually is? If a geopolitical shock that is outside of Nigeria, I know we spoke about this the last time you were here, if a geopolitical shock that is outside Nigeria controls us, look at what it can do. It undid months of the hard work of trying to stabilize, that sector. What does that say about our own economy?
Okay, your questions are always very, bone touching. Fine, but I think Nigeria is an economy that cannot operate in isolation. we are also part of the world, global economy, and whatever happens in the world will one way or more have the impact on Nigeria. But what this government has achieved is I think they have done well by immunizing Nigeria's economy against global shock, if you ask me. Over time, since I think I was here when we started this very early days of this Iran-Israel war, when we talked about the Strait of Hormuz and the importance to global economy. And at a point, Brent crude price went as high as over $100 per barrel. Consider that to pre-war level, we're seeing about 80% rise, between 60 to 80% rise. But did we experience such in Nigeria? Of course, at the point, we also, from 700 naira pre-war level, or 740 naira pre-war level, it touched around 1,300 naira, and that was when oil price was hitting 109 and all that. So it's the impact is not that proportionate to the shock that happened in the developed world. In the UK, in the US, in Canada, and other developed economies, they felt it far worse than we did in Nigeria. I think it's an advantage for Nigeria and that's a clear indication of a working reform, in my sense, because if we had direct impact of that war on us, it would have been worse. And what happened in this case is, number one, our ability to refine our products on our own. And then that helped us, because if that had not happened, if we didn't have the Dangote that is giving us supplying our local consumption now. Yeah. Imagine that we are waiting for the rest of the world to supply us fuel. We'll be buying at black markets, and then that will translate to over, I think, conservatively, maybe 300%, increase in that. So that's the immunization that I talked about, that the government has been able to immunize our economy, because we saved FX. We didn't have to import fuel during that tough period, which we might not even be able to achieve, because we saw some economies in Bangladesh and other developing economies without fuel, for a very long time within the period of this war. So I think for us, it's still good for Nigeria, and that reform created Dangote refinery. That reform also stopped us from, using the chunk of our FX in importing petroleum products.
Would you really say that reform actually created a Dangote refinery? Because if you take your mind back, Dangote refinery was already in the works before the reform began to work. Before the reform started, even the conversation of reform, before you get to the table, Dangote was already planning on building his refinery. He was already working on that as well.
Imagine we see our first subsidy regime in force. Do you think Dangote refinery will survive? It will not survive.
Because I think they also listed it in this whole scorecard. They said it was a genuine structural win for them.
In fact, Dangote will not even complete the refinery, because the big boys enjoying subsidy fraud will never, even without these guys. When the president came in, he said subsidy removed. Right. Because those guys were not there anymore. It was softer for that implementation to come into effect. Despite that, we know what happened now. 2/8 of major government petroleum agencies were removed because they never wanted this Dangote refinery to work. Right. It tells you the rot in the system and how this government has been able to crash some of those inadequacies, that we've experienced in the past. So I think I strongly agree. I align with that position that the coming on board of this refinery is a huge relief for Nigeria structurally.
You talked about monetary policy earlier on, right? And again, if you look at the scorecard, the government said that the monetary policy rate increased from 18.5% to 26.5% during the reform season. According to them, the idea was to control the inflation and stabilize the currency as well. But of course, you understand that high interest rates also make loans more expensive for businesses. So the question is, did Nigeria have much choice, or was this monetary tightening necessary? Was it really necessary? The aggressive monetary tightening, was it necessary at the point when it came on board?
Absolutely, it's very necessary, because likened to a doctor, If you have a patient that is bleeding, that is a very clear indication. If your economy was in bad, our economy was in a very bad state, and we needed quick fix. We needed quick fix. And then the low-hanging fruit around it was just, look, allow more money to come in, allow the economy to be re-energized, so that you can have, you can reflect the economy from the point of view of activities, productivity, and all of that. And the government was able to do that by raising interest rates, encouraging investors from outside of the country to inflow funds, and then working on other macros to ensure that the economy is, it's attractive for them to come in and invest. Having achieved that, of course, with the removal of subsidy, we on this table we always talk about the triggers of inflation, energy, food, and all that. So, and then when you remove subsidy, it's a direct impact on energy, and it will, when your energy price goes up, it will affect every other item in the inflation basket. And then the best way to manage inflation is also to use rate to fight it, and that's what we've seen. And then over time, from that high of 27%, we have gone 50 basis points below that now to 26.5, and we expect that before the end of the year, most likely, CBN will still have to cut rate, because say for this unending Middle East crisis, we would have seen a huge cut, maybe around 24 or 25% levels, which is, of course, driving that, because inflation is now being tamed until, we were having month-on-month deflationary level until we got this Middle East trigger, until you got to that peak, that inflation also rose to around 16%, I think 15.94 thereabout. But as at the last count, inflation was reading 15.43, which is also an indicator that things are getting better, regulated now.
All right. Now, one of the major things that was pointed out from that scorecard was Taiwo Oyedele saying that he didn't come out to declare victory or anything of the sort. And now he also wants a 7% GDP growth and a $1 trillion economy, before he can actually declare whatever reforms that are currently happening in the economy a complete success. Now, given Nigerians' growth trajectory, you have monitored that closely. What would you say? Is it a realistic 5-year target for us to want to have a $1 trillion economy in the next 5 years? Is that a realistic target, or it's a closer to a political talking point just to win Nigerians?
There's a common saying that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a step, and this what we have seen, since the announcement of this $1 trillion economy, clearly shows that, look, we have started the step. And of course, not just starting it, we started it in the right direction. When this story came out, we were on this table and we said, look, it will take minimum or average of 7% GDP growth to achieve $1 trillion economy by 2030. And we made that statistics very clear. But since then, I think the highest we have attained was, 4.25, thereabout. And then as at the last GDP growth figure, it was just 3.96 or thereabout. That's Q1. Q2 figure should have been out yesterday or today, probably. So if you look at the gap, what the actual against our projection, we have gap. Yeah. And how are we closing that gap? Or what are the measures that have been put in place by government to achieve that $1 trillion economy? Which I think the effect will be accelerated probably from 2027. I think so, because the risk around the country risk of Nigeria now will probably be defrayed between now and the first quarter of 2027, in my sense. So what we have seen the government done and achieved, and is still a work in progress, is the banking sector recapitalization. That has been concluded. That tells you that they have additional money now, and where will those money go? It will remain in this system and then catalyze the economy. We've had a recently concluded insurance sector recapitalization as well. That's huge capital inflow too. That's around trillion naira or something, for Nigeria. And we also have the pension industry recapitalization ongoing. That will be concluded by 2027 as well. So a whole lot of this recapitalization going on in the financial sector. We've also seen structural changes in other sectors of the economy. I think if we are not able to get to $1 trillion by 2030, I bet you the gap we will have gotten somewhere. The gap will have been far, far, far different from where we were.
All right. So
Finally,
if we're stripping away all politics right now, and you're going to grade this scorecard as a financial analyst, what would it be? And what metrics would you be looking out for in the next couple of months to actually verify that it's real?
Well, to verify that
these reforms that are being done is actually real. I said, what will you grade this scorecard as a financial analyst, and what metrics would you be looking out for in the next couple of months to actually verify that it's real?
Okay. To start with, I'm not a politician. I don't think we are politicians, so we are here just to talk objectively on the economy and the achievements. So, but in the next few months or down the line, I will be looking at purchasing power parity. The purchasing power of an average Nigerian, the disposable income of an average Nigerian, to know whether this government, these reforms are actually working or not. I will also be looking at the quantum or the allocation of middle class that Nigeria has achieved within the period of that reform, to know, because as I said earlier, the rating of an economy, the achievement of an economy is more visible in the size of the middle class that economy has created. And we're also looking at the growth, MSME growth, taking data from the likes of Smidan, NISA, and all of that, to know whether we have done better than planned or we are within the range of achievement that we set out to achieve. And basically, because I'm talking basically about micro now, because the macros are good for us. They are looking well for us. So, but we need to see from the ground, because if we are able to achieve better spread at the lower level, I think going up will be easier, which is what typical economic theory, will speak to. So I think basically those are the things I will look at, and the inflation level, particularly food inflation, the energy side of it as well. If Nigerians are able to be buying petrol at below 1,000 naira, it makes a lot of sense for us. Currently we know, and most analysts, except those that have different data that we don't have, that you don't bet against naira at the current level. Naira is undervalued. We feel that, we believe that naira is undervalued. So if we have assets in FX now, analysts will advise you change it to naira and enjoy the higher interest rate in naira. So those are facts that, look, this reform is working. They will want it to be more visible at the household and businesses level. And that's what I think we need to do.
7 out of 10. You haven't did you escape it?
The minister himself, the minister said 7 out of 10.
Right.
But for me, I think I align with the minister. I'll rate it 7 out of 10.
Are you sure?
I'll rate it 7 out of 10.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Idris Adeni, for your time today. We do appreciate you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for joining us.
All right, back to myself and Martha as we conclude the conversation this morning. Of course, one thing that Nigerians are looking out for is for all of the reforms to translate into a better living for us as citizens, that we can get onto the market and buy things without thinking of breaking the bank. And those are just the things that Nigerians are asking for. I don't think that is too much for us.
It's actually not. And just to add, we're not ungrateful for the growth in the macroeconomic level.
Right.
Because more investors, more people trusting the economy now, and but let's see that translating in the lives of, the common man. And I think that that's just going to be the ultimate 10 out of 10 for the government.
Definitely. But that being said, this is all we are going to be taking on today's edition of Rapid Down this morning. Do remember that you can follow us on our social media pages across all platforms at Rapid TV. You can get to rewatch all our episodes on YouTube, which is at Official Rapid TV. And wherever you are in the world, you can watch us live using our website, www.arabianradiotv.com. And also, There is a new addition. You can get to download the Free TV app and search for Rapid Television, and we're going to be right there on your screen. My name is Victor. Okay.
My name is Martha Alo. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow.